The biggest problem with talking about science, especially as it relates with religion, is that there's just a desperate need for intelligent conversation, and it doesn't exist. There's kind of this idea that it's all the religious people's fault too. Like, for instance, science is so intelligent and religion is so dumb that therefore everybody whose argument is science is inherently smart, and everybody who's even has a bias of religion is wrong and stupid. The thing is, that kind of one-dimensional thinking is actually part of the problem. When when you can't objectively consider a argument because of, well, your belief or disbelief in the person's personal belief system. Well, let me say it like this. Okay, I was reading a book. There's a better way of showing it. What I'm getting at is, yes, many arguments in the scientific debates that are just stupid are cooked up by religious people. Absolutely. But the exact same is true of these other people, these atheists and these non-religious people. You can't say my argument is smart simply because it is non-religious. See what I mean? Like it makes sense at first, but if you actually think about it, it's not the smartest thing. I'll give you a good example. I was reading a book called Kindred by an excellent writer. Her name is Rebecca Sykes, and the book really was a phenomenal book. It was discussing Neanderthals, and basically, there's a lot of misconceptions about Neanderthals, that they were just these big old dummies, and they maybe were the in-between species between monkey and Homo sapien or something, and just nonsense like that. Well, in this book, she does a really good job of, discussing them and helping us understand them better and whatnot, which I think is a really good thing. But she makes this comment, and she talks about the way that Neanderthals lived at the same time as Homo sapiens, and they interbred, and there was another thing that she said, but her main argument there was, because Neanderthals lived at the same time as Homo sapiens and interbred with us, that means that there is no God and that the world wasn't made for us, but Mother Nature spawned many children at the same time. Well, here's the problem. I have four problems with that idea. Number one, how does there being multiple intelligent life at the same time mean that there is no God, or that we just happen to evolve from nothing on our own? It doesn't. That's her own prejudice reading into the situation. But remember, she's a non-religious person, so surely her argument is intelligent just because it's non-religious. And you see people doing this on YouTube a lot too, where, okay, you're so stupid because you're religious, oh, you're so stupid because you're atheist. There has to be a point where when we, okay, say, oh, all right, hold on. Let's have an intelligent conversation about this, and this is the biggest issue. And no, your argument is not smarter just because it is non-religious or religious. That's not what makes an argument intelligent. Is it feasible? Does it make sense? Is there evidence for it? These are the things that add up to something being intelligent. Here's just and I'm going to go on with the list of four rebuttals to Rebecca Sykes. But here's just another thing: people generally believe in more civilized places that there's no such thing as supernatural occurrences and those kinds of things, and yet there are things that can't be explained by normal science. So, see what I mean? Like, we have this idea that, oh, it's stupid to believe in anything supernatural or transphysical, or however you want to say that. And then at the same time, like even like if you read the book Dune, for instance, there's this kind of strong anti-God bias, but then the whole way through it ends up being an argument for God. Well, I can't really get into that because it's read Dune. That's all you need to know. It's probably one of the best works of fiction that exists. Um, anyways, uh, so I'm a Dune fan. Don't judge me. Going back to the four things. Number one, how does Neanderthals and Homo sapiens living at the same time mean that there is no God and that we just spawned from Mother Nature? It doesn't. Number two, Christians don't believe that we are the center of the universe. We don't believe that everything was made and created for us. We believe that it was made and created by God for God. God is the center. So that's actually a straw man. Number three, the Bible never said Homo sapiens were the only ones made. We assume that. But it's also just as feasible to say that all of the different homo groups or intelligent life, whatever, however you want to say that, spawned from Adam, that Adam was like a, predecessor to all of those, which, granted, would put the age of the earth drastically farther back than people typically agree, but still. So, I mean, that could mean that just as much as it could mean that they were living at the same, that they were not from the same cause, whatever. And then the fourth issue is that, in making statements like that Mother Nature spawned us all at the same time. Basically, what you're doing is you're attributing divinity to Mother Nature. So you're making God and denying God. Do you see how foolish that is? If you're going to completely reject the idea of God, you have to accept a world of chaos and meaninglessness. And you also shouldn't be that concerned about global warming or preserving the world because, hey, life finds a way. It'll evolve, it'll adapt. And if we are the problem, then the world, in its chaosness, will, find a way to either adapt or to kill us off or something. So, I mean, a bunch of things that contradict each other. The only reason why there is sense of how we live morals. Should I kill children? Should I try and save the earth? The only way that even makes sense is if there is a purpose and a meaning to the existence. So, making Mother Nature divine really doesn't help because you've given Mother Nature forethought and power and, all these different things. And it's like, well, so basically you've just called God Mother Nature. You haven't actually resolved the God problem. And there is just a certain order to the world, things that keep it going, a certain beauty to it, a certain ethical requirement to it. So what I'm getting at here is that there really needs to be more intelligent conversation about science. And a person is not inherently wrong or stupid just because they have a religious belief. And you are not inherently superior because you have a belief in science. The thing about science is science has a lot of really strict limitations. And just simply ignoring that really doesn't help. And it leads into something called, I think it's called scientism. The idea being that everything that is knowable through science, and that's just simply not true. What about the existence of truth, for instance? Science can't tell us anything about whether truth does actually exist or not, just that we can observe what is observable. What about, things that aren't so concrete, things that are abstract? Science doesn't really have a way to deal with those things. Science can't disprove metaphysical. Science can't give too much clarity on things that aren't repeatable. So basically, science is the ability to observe and to be able to figure out what is happening, the effects of something. Sometimes it's able to discern the cause as well, but that's very much so limited. And being able to look at nature and saying, look at how we can see how these things are happening doesn't explain why they're happening. We can say, yes, the world just works like that, but why does it work like that? Why are the laws of nature what they are? how does everything work out to be just like that? And this is a big problem. A lot of times people just fall back on this and they avoid the question in total by saying, it's just the way it is. Why is it the way that it is? Well, because of evolution. Well, see, that's what I'm talking about. That's just a cop-out. You're not actually putting any serious thought, any study, any new hypothesis. You're not adding to the pool of knowledge. You're just simply saying, because of what was, I can ignore what is. And that's just not that's not intelligent. So, okay, now that we've kind of beaten that, up, kind of drug that out quite a bit, I'll go back to the same thing I ended in the previous lesson. You don't have to believe in evolution. You don't have to. There are many ways to interpret the facts. And there are many unanswered questions, but this applies to both evolution and for any theory that discredits evolution. That's something that we have to genuinely think clearly on, and the problem is people don't want to have that conversation. You already probably have your mind made up about evolution. You probably already have your mind made up about what to believe on different things, and you're not willing to bend and to think. You're just instantly taking apart somebody else's idea of how they're wrong and you're right. But see, that's nothing more than your own arrogance and pride. That's not how you increase knowledge. It's not how you work through problems. You have to be willing to go where other people aren't going and try things that people haven't tried. Now, with that being said, let's talk about something that is just incredibly stupid, and it involves religious people. So, it's very common for religious people to just deny anything that science brings up. Like, okay, the world is we're pretty sure it's really super old. We're pretty sure. So then religious people come by, no, that's wrong. Okay, but we have the people who say that the earth is old, but we have all these dating methods. So then the religious person comes up, they're not accurate in dating things too young. That is true. This is a true statement. However, do you have a alternative dating method? No. So until we've discovered something that's more accurate, which there's no reason to believe that we're off by that much, we might as well just accept the fact that the earth is really old. Especially because the Bible itself kind of hints to the idea that the earth is really, really old. See, the problem is that we get caught up into the 7 days of creation thing, and we don't really understand it for what it's trying to say. We understand it for it's a science textbook, and it's not a science textbook, and it's just a lot of people not willing to have a conversation because they get their traditions mixed up with it. And once we get things where it's part of our tradition, then we start not thinking very critically. So one of the things I read from a Christian source, which was very troubling, it was talking about the existence of dragons, which we have no proof that dragons ever existed. But they're saying, yes, dragons did exist. And then we have proof of something that we believe is evolution. We could be misinterpreting the facts. We could be misunderstanding. Okay, all right. But at least there's evidence of some kind. And they deny that. You see what I mean? You see why this just makes you look kind of stupid? Yes, dragons did exist when there's no proof for them. But evolution in no form whatsoever has ever existed. But there is proof for it. Now, once again, you don't have to believe in evolution, but you have to do something about the facts. You can't just dismiss facts that don't fit your agenda. You can't do that. It's like atheists love doing this with DNA. DNA is a freaking language. It's a language of life that exists inside of us. We don't even fully understand all of it. The grand majority of the DNA structure, maybe that's something that's not relevant from evolution, maybe. But we don't even know that. That's just an assumption because we believe in evolution. Therefore, that must be leftover garbage data from evolution. But we don't know that. So we're going out on these wild speculations about DNA. If somebody dropped a book from outer space and it had all this, information on it, we'd say, hey, somebody wrote this book. If we go on the side of a beach and we see a sandcastle, we say, hey, somebody built the sandcastle. So we see a literal language inside of us, the complexity of DNA, and we would just dismiss it as, oh, random happenstance. That doesn't make sense because it would have had to exist in order for it to exist. You see what I mean? Just absolute nonsense. You can't just dismiss because it doesn't fit your agenda. You have to start thinking critically about this kind of stuff. I'm not just talking about non-religious people, I'm talking about religious people too. Don't believe something just because Ken Ham said it, just because it helps you to hold on to your shred of dignity with the Bible. Maybe your understanding of the Bible is wrong. Maybe the reason why you're having such a hard time validating your tradition from the Bible is because the Bible doesn't teach that. That's something that people just invented. So they teach that dragons existed when there's no proof, but deny evolution when there's lots of proof. That's against reason. You have to give some kind of an intelligent rebuttal of some kind. And what religious people do is they love to cling to the blind faith thing. I believe because I believe. God doesn't really expect us to have blind faith. I mean, think of, for instance, Jesus. He literally came, people saw him, he literally died, people saw him, and then he rose from the dead. People saw him, and then he ascended into heaven. People saw him, and then they died for it. People die for what they believe all the time, but they don't die for things that they know are not true. That's just nonsense. That's not blind faith. There's a reason to the faith. There's an empty tomb. These are reasons for this. There's something that we experience, we encounter. Reason. Blind faith doesn't make you a better Christian, and it doesn't make it more true. I believe it because I stand on belief. Oh, okay, that's fine, but maybe you're wrong. There are problems with dating methods, yes. Ken Ham loves to harp on that. But there are no reliable alternatives that even give us a fraction of what it could be. So there's kind of this middle ground that we need to find. There's the extreme left, and they run with anything that they think discredits God, like Rebecca Sykes. And then there's the extreme right, and they just believe in nonsense, things that are completely unfounded, just invented. Surely there's a better middle ground where we don't have to go to such extremes, and we can follow the facts. Maybe, for instance, what if the Bible was true, but it is not exhaustive? Is that possible? Why, yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is possible. We don't have to just accept things just because our tradition demands it of us. Could we be misunderstanding the Bible? That's a question that you should be always asking yourself. The Enlightenment and science in general, in more recent years, have become the forefront. Individuality, that kind of stuff. But back when the Bible was written, that wasn't really a thing. The Enlightenment hadn't happened. Science wasn't at the forefront. Maybe we could take the Bible for what it claims to be, and accept the fact that it doesn't have full knowledge in every situation. The Bible does not have full knowledge on every situation. That's just something we have to come to grips with. But to go along with this blind faith idea, this idea of, oh, the Bible says it, so I stand on it, but the Bible doesn't say it. To go along with this whole issue of blind faith, there's kind of another issue, and that's assumption. Christians make a lot of assumptions about the data. For instance, as it applies to evolution. No, there can be no evolution because that would mean that God didn't make it right in the first place. How does that mean that? Let's just roll with me for a second. When a person gets saved, do they become perfect at the moment of salvation? No. God starts the work and he continues the work in them. So, does that mean that God's salvation isn't right and perfect? By your own standards of, oh, evolution can exist because that would mean that God didn't do it right the first time, then that would mean that when God saved us, he didn't do it right the first time. See how stupid but no, I'm assuming my answer on this. Well, maybe you're assuming wrong. Maybe you are misinterpreting the data. Genesis has to be an exact chronological dating of the world and how old it is because otherwise it's wrong. Or maybe you're just misunderstanding what it's trying to say. Is that possible? Here's another little thing. People say, Christians say, well, evolution can't be real because that would mean that God didn't make it right. Well, hold on. A lot of people who say that they don't believe in evolution actually do, and I'll show you what I mean. Do you believe that no animals originally ate meat in the beginning with Adam and Eve, that no animals ever ate meat? Which it doesn't say that. But do you believe that? Okay, so that would mean that they would have had to evolve to eat meat? See what I mean? Little things that aren't really thought out too well. Or, and roll with me on this, they did eat meat. Just think about it. Do you believe that there was no death whatsoever before the fall? So you could even say that people evolved to die? Which I believe that there was death before the fall, because God clearly says, hey, if you eat of that, you will die. There was clearly an idea of what death is. It wouldn't have made much sense if they had no idea what he was talking about. So people do this, and I have to wrap this up real quick. The Bible says it, I believe it. Well, that's good, and I applaud your faithfulness to the Bible, but there's a few things. Number one, there are translation issues. And things aren't always translated the right way. Then number two, there's misunderstandings. Just because you read it that way doesn't mean that that's what it intended originally. So I hope that this kind of helps to kind of meet the gap between science and religion a little bit.